Hi there, and welcome to my Viking cabin here in Norway. 10 misconceptions about Vikings. First one, the Vikings had horns on their helmets. This is an easy one because most people these days, they know that the Vikings did not have horns on their helmets. So let's move on to the second myth, or the second lie about the Vikings and the Norse culture. The peaceful conversion myth. This is a stubborn one. The idea is that the Norse, the Vikings, were converted to Christianity in a peaceful manner. I don't know. I could say a lot about that, but I don't know who's teaching that these days. Maybe somewhere in America. I don't know. But it's a myth, it's a lie. There's like a mountain of historical and archaeological evidence that it was not a peaceful conversion. People fought to the death to keep the old ways. Viking is a verb. No, it's not. It's not a verb because you can't say to Viking. You can't say to Viking. You would say to go Viking. It's not a verb. So that's another misconception. This leads me to the next point on my list, that the Vikings were a people. No, they were not a people. Viking was something that you did. As I said, you would go Viking. And it's, even though I say the Vikings, as you know, refer to the Norse, that's actually not correct, because the Vikings were not a people. Next on my list is the myth that the Vikings had tattoos. But there is no evidence or even anything at all that suggests that they had tattoos. It was not part of their culture. There is no Old Norse word for tattoos, and it's basically just a fantasy thing. It's been popularized, and it's one of those examples where basically our own culture is being put as a layer over how we see the Vikings. But Vikings and tattoos, not very likely. Next on my list is the myth, or the misconception, that the Vikings all came from Scandinavia. Most of them came from Scandinavia, but not all of them. It was a culture that spread out, and it was not exclusively Scandinavian. You would probably have found people from other places among the Vikings on board the ships when they went Viking. But most of them from Scandinavia. That leads me to number 7, I believe. This modern idea that they were multicultural. No, they were not. The Norse culture was very dominant, and it spread out in Europe. And it's correct that they would be influenced by other cultures, of course, but the idea that they were this group of inclusive people that were basically multicultural is not correct. That's something that some modern people kind of want to believe, but there is nothing to suggest that that was ever a thing back then. Number 8, the Vikings were very tall. No, not correct. You see these fantasy images on the internet and so on, that there were these giants. No, they were, I've heard different different ideas about that, but you know, they would be like 170, 172 for a man, and the women were shorter, something like that. But they were taller than many other people in Europe, down south, so in the southern parts of Europe and so on. Probably because they had a good diet. They were seen as tall in their time, but they were on average shorter than us, at least shorter than Scandinavians today. And number 9, I believe, is the idea that they were dirty. They were not dirty. Actually, there's a very funny anecdote written back then. Some guy in England, he was so annoyed with these Danes, as they would call them back then, because the women liked them so much, because they were clean and they had nice clothes. So we know quite a bit about their personal hygiene, actually, because we have found items in burial mounds and so on, and they were not dirty people. Of course, they didn't have access to like a shower in the every morning, or you know, like we have in this modern world. But no, they were not dirty. And number 10 is the idea and the misconception, the lie that they did not have a written language. I don't know where that comes from, that idea, but they did have a written language. Most people have heard about runes. So yeah, and actually there's quite a lot of rune carvings that have been preserved, and they tell us quite a bit about the Viking Age. So yeah, they did have a written language. Now I could go on, because there are many lies and misconceptions and myths about the Vikings, but let's stick with 10 of them for now. If you enjoyed this video, please help this struggling channel by subscribing to this channel, and please leave a comment. It would be awesome. If I don't know if I'll regret this, but if I ever reach 1 million subscribers on this channel, I will eat a dried fish. Yeah. So now you know what to do. He really wants one.